Our next story, unsurprisingly, comes from Florida, where an audience member called 911 after Middle Eastern comment made at comedy show in Naples. An audience member called 911 after attending comedian Ahmed Ahmed's show at Off the Hook Comedy Club. Now, you may be saying to yourself, God bless the First Amendment. We have a right to speak and express ourselves. But there are some limits, and it's interesting where those lines are drawn. So as you know, there is some controversy over whether or not you can yell fire in a crowded theater or incite to violence. We have decided that free speech is not absolute in this country. The argument now between what I could guess you could call the right and the left has to do with where the line is, where it should be. Because in fact, there are some free speech absolutists in this argument saying you should be able to yell fire in a crowded theater. That is your right to speak. And it's and I'm kind of sympathetic to that argument, because what we're doing is policing interpretation of certain words. Imagine if you said certain words on an airplane, you could incite panic that could be dangerous, and thus we have actually set a restriction on speech. Now, I am not an absolutist in free speech. I do believe there are reasonable limits. Don't incite violence. Don't direct someone to commit a crime, because that's different from expressing your thoughts. But then it is an interesting debate as to where that line is drawn. If someone is a comedian at a show and they say something, and someone takes it literally and calls 911, can you be surprised? Well, let's read this story. This is from NBC, but there's a reason why I'm highlighting this specifically. And it's because over across the pond in the UK, from whence we came hundreds of years ago, sort of came. I understand America's a great melting pot. But, the revolution, Great Britain, yada, 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 they don't have a First Amendment. And you can see actually how bad it gets with Count Dankula, who is a comedian who made a joke, getting arrested and convicted of making a joke. And he's certainly not the only one. You can also see how the press reacts to 3-year-old jokes when you look at someone like Carl Benjamin, now that he's running for office. But the reason why this is important is because we can see what happens when you don't have at least some kind of restriction on the government when it comes to your speech. Let's read this story, and then we'll take a look at some other issues pertaining to free speech. An audience member called 911 after attending comedian Ahmed Ahmed's show at Off the Hook Comedy Club on May 12th. The caller said Ahmed asked the audience how many Middle Eastern people were there, according to a 911 call released by the Collier County Sheriff's Office. They actually have the full 911 call. I'm not going to play it, but we'll read the story. The caller said about 25 Muslims were at the show, claiming to be from Iran and Iraq. Later, Ahmed allegedly said, we could organize our own, terror organization. I don't know if it's fear, racism, ignorance, or Islamophobia, or whatever you want to call it, Ahmed said. It's unfortunate that somebody was very adamant about making a point to make a 911 call. The person admitted to the dispatcher that they called deputies because they felt uncomfortable after the comment and asked if something like that should be said. The caller was concerned Ahmed would say the same comment again in a later performance. Clearly a joke at a comedy club. But here's something interesting, right? So this comedian is Ahmed Ahmed. He posted a video of him talking to the club owner about what happened. And I believe, I'm not entirely sure, I believe he's from or lives in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So when he makes a reference to Islam, you don't typically associate those kind of jokes with the left. The point is, outrage can affect everybody. We don't know who this person was who called the police, why, or what their motivation was, but it was definitely related to Islam. There are people who want to draw lines in different directions for different reasons. I would stress that outrage is not unique to any one side, and we should be like, here's the thing. Here's the point I'm trying to make. In the free speech debate, conservatives have circled the wagons to protect conservatives. But the left won't protect the anti-war left. And so we're seeing people who are, anti-intervention for Venezuela on the left, their accounts get wiped. You see people who are, one of the most notable instances is Mathic Media. So these are left-wing individuals. They don't like Donald Trump, but they really, really don't like war. Facebook suspended their account and they broke no rules because of a CNN hit piece. So I think it's important to point out, it definitely appears that conservatives are the overwhelming majority of those restricted, suspended, banned, etc. You still have people on the left who are being restricted, And actually, I think when it comes to anti-intervention, I have a lot of conservatives who agree, but they are getting restricted too. This comedian should not have the police called on him because he made a silly joke about the fact that there were Middle Easterners in his club. I actually think it's really important to ridicule these ideas. Ridicule is one of the most important things you can do to break the fear and actually help unite people. So he wants to make a joke about, he's pointing out you have all of these people from the Middle East, and that's something people are concerned about. He makes a joke about it. I respect the right to joke. I recently saw some woke comedians make jokes about white people and the devil. And I said, I don't care if you want to joke about that stuff. I really, really don't. I understand maybe some white people would be upset, but the issue is really the double standard. If this guy wants to be able to joke about Middle Easterners, no, you shouldn't call the cops on him. And no, you shouldn't get offended or outraged that he as a Middle Eastern individual or South Asian Muslim is talking about Islam. And at the same time, if a woke comedian wants to make jokes about white people, I'm also just going to be like, hey man, it's a joke. People make jokes. But it doesn't go that way. That's not the direction things flow. The reason I highlight this story, the reason I want to talk about this is it's not for lack of trying that people in the U.S. want to stop free speech. Okay, they're definitely trying. We can look at the UK and we can see comments made on Twitter get people put in jail. We can see Mark Meechan. We have the story from the BBC where it talks about YouTube candidates in politics, and we have Count Dankula, who literally, he made a silly video he had no subscribers. He was just some dude in Scotland who made a funny video where he taught a pug to do a salute. And sure enough, he gets charged and arrested. So thank God for the First Amendment. But look at what's happening in the US. You still have people who are trying and pushing the line. And that really is disconcerting. When you see so many people say that hate speech should be regulated, when you see that you actually have the co-founder of Facebook saying the government should regulate speech. I kid you not, he actually said that in an op-ed in the New York Times. Well, they can't, because the founding fathers were correct. People have a right to express themselves. They saw this. They knew it would happen. And it's really interesting. Why did the founding fathers want to declare independence from Great Britain? A lot of reasons. Interestingly, though, one of the things they enshrined in the Bill of Rights, the first thing they enshrined, protecting religion, the press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the right to a redress of grievances. Things as if we actually get a redress of grievances, for the most part, but we have a good system. It's not perfect, and we can constantly improve it. But protecting the press, speech, religion, these are paramount. Excuse me. If somebody wants to make a joke, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. There are lines. Admittedly, there are lines. And people are trying to push the line further and further to restrict more and more speech. The dangerous thing here is that we're seeing it in America more and more often. We saw activists at Berkeley burning free speech signs, and now I understand. Look, we're talking about one comedy club in Florida from one guy. This guy, Ahmed Ahmed, has a Netflix special, right? How many followers does this guy have? He's got 23,000 followers. He's not some nobody comic. He's a comic with a Netflix special. And someone actually called the police because they felt threatened by a joke he made. Okay. So the police, came and said, yeah, nothing's wrong. God bless the First Amendment. But again, the point is it's not for lack of trying. We have to make sure that we defend the right to make jokes. I grew up on George Carlin. George Carlin was a great inspiration to me. Somebody who told the authority, told the establishment, to buzz off, gave him the middle finger, and he had no problem going on stage and saying, this is what's important. And he said some pretty damn offensive things to applause. And I couldn't imagine George Carlin, I know for a fact, if George Carlin was around today, and this breaks my heart, his YouTube channel would be banned. I'm surprised you can still watch his clips, because he has a segment where he refers to Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy with a disparaging, hate comment. Not allowed today. You can't tweet that stuff. And this is a guy who pioneered and fought against censorship, the 7 words you can't say on TV. Now we end up with, over in the UK, this is where things have gone. That Sargon of Akkad, the YouTuber, is being investigated over a joke he made 3 years ago. So think about this. It's not so much that Carl did something wrong today. They're investigating him now. Why are they investigating him now? He's running for office. you can see the dangers of policing speech. As much as we have a First Amendment, we don't have the protection from these big tech companies. So I am appalled, not surprised that someone would call the police on a comedian, but repeatedly the argument from the left is that private platforms have no obligation to keep you on board. But the other big issue when it comes to free speech that I want to highlight here is how the public, the media, will use your speech as a weapon. You know, I watched Dave Rubin the other day. He had Mike Cernovich on. Rubin talked about how years ago he made a comment about the alt-right. And he said that he referred to them in a certain way, and now he's quoted as saying something that isn't true today. It's an old comment about a group that wasn't as clearly defined. At the time he made the comment, no one really knew what the alt-right was. So when Rubin made his quote, he did make reference to the bad people associated with it, and they take the one snippet where he's praising, you know, this group of people. That's the danger of what the public, what the media does with speech. So I guess the point I'm trying to say is, thank God for the First Amendment. This comedian was allowed to do his routine. The police came. That shouldn't have happened. That should not have happened. But I will admit, it's entirely possible someone crosses the line at a comedy routine and actually does say something, because we do have a line. I'm talking about a direct incitement to violence. Like if someone on the comedian on the stage said, "I want you to go do X," at a certain point you got to say, "Hey man, it's not comedy. Like, you've crossed the line." Some people disagree. If you disagree, let me know what you think, you know, in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. But the point I'm trying to bring up is that with the ledger existing, your speech will be weaponized and the government can't do anything about it, can't protect you. They just can't stop you, you know, from saying something. But certainly the BBC can then write a smear campaign. Vox can take you out of context. This is the real danger of the weaponization of speech. And, you know, I don't know if there's a real solution. All I can really say is I'm someone who believes people have a right to express themselves and joke about things. Ridicule is important. You get rid of bad ideas by mocking them. And that's really all you can do. I don't think there's ever going to be a point where those of us who believe in free speech can sit back, pull up, you know, hit the lever on our recliners and say, we've won, we've done it. This is a never-ending battle to protect the right to express yourself. And it's been going on since the beginning of time. Many countries still have blasphemy laws. Yeah, and technically now, these hate speech laws in the UK are akin to that. You can't speak ill of a religion. They've expanded blasphemy beyond the religion to now encompass other groups. So much so that 3 years after a joke was made, Carl Benjamin now gets investigated by it. I feel for my cousins across the pond. It's unfortunate. You guys need a constitution. And I am grateful every day we have one. The point of this video, someone just had the cops called on them for making a joke. Here's the thing. I should have read this earlier, so I apologize. But the joke was essentially, he said something like this. He said there was 25 people from Middle Eastern countries. He said, I knew there was at least one of us in here. Comedians, of course, comedians. That's the joke. He was mocking the extremists. He was like, I applaud the joke. I think it's funny. He's making fun of this idea. That's what comedians do. And the other thing we need to remember is that comedians are meant to push the line over what is or isn't offensive. Right? Do you know the aristocrats joke is? It's as offensive as possible and disgusting on purpose. Because, you know, comedians go up on stage and try and figure out what's too offensive and what isn't. That's part of what they do. But today, you have people seriously trying to shut down speech. And this is worrisome. To call the police, kind of an escalation. Now, I get it. Maybe they're scared, sure. And I'm glad the police backed off and were like, hey, man. But what Ahmed said is, he says, it's never happened to me or any comedian I believe. Effing crazy, man. The cops were like, WTF. So here's the thing. I don't want to overestimate the severity of what really happened because the cops smiled, laughed, and they all had, you know, left. But just always remember, the line isn't ever just shifted dramatically. It's nudged. They push it slowly, incrementally. Today, the police, it's the first time this person's experienced this, him or any other comedian. The first time. It could happen again. And what happens when it keeps happening? Comedy! Man, I am not too optimistic, I gotta say that. But well, I'll leave it there. Stick around. I've got another video, more videos coming up later. If you're listening, it'll be in a few seconds. And if you're watching on YouTube, there are six. I believe I'm doing 6:30, and 7 p.m. now. So stick around. There'll be more videos later today. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all at the next video.